I'm co-host James Ash.
And I'm co-host Phil Scaife.
Welcome to the Business Lockdown.
Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Business Lockdown. And welcome back for the second time, Martin Johnson.
Cheers, Phil.
Hey.
Good to be back, James. Good to be back, Phil. I enjoyed it so much that agreed to come back on.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to recap, Martin is founder, owner, director of Trans2 Performance, or T2 for short, dealing with all things to do with human performance. And on our last interview, we talked about the human iceberg and how to form deeper knowledge of yourself and others for communication, for relationships, for performance. And as promised, James and I went off and we did our homework, and we're here to chat about the reports, how that will work for us, how that could potentially work for other people. And generally just to sort of dive deeper into a really, really important topic. So thanks for coming back, Martin.
You're welcome. It's like I say, genuinely is good to be back. I enjoyed the chat last time, and when we talked through the stuff we talked through, I was genuinely intrigued about what was motivating you two, and we had a bit of a laugh on it. So it was interesting to see the results, and it actually surprised me. I don't know if it surprised you two, but it surprised me.
Well, I think I'm excited. We're gonna definitely drill down into it and cover a number of areas. But I think most importantly, what everybody will want to know is who's better.
Well, as you will know, and
remember the check's in the post. The check is in the post, Martin. So,
as you will know, and as the reveal will reveal, that question is a loaded question because you're either both as good as each other or as bad as each other, and I don't know which one it is.
Yeah, so that's the first thing, isn't it? That our profiles are very, very similar.
Very similar. So, I mean, it might be worth just quickly kicking off with just a very, very quick recap of what we discussed on the last one, and then we can just get stuck into what came out of your profile. So there was 9 things human beings can be motivated by, if you remember. We went through the 9 things on the last, and there was numbered 1 to 9, from perfect, correct, and right to succeed and achieve, to be special and find meaning, knowledgeable and smart, blah, blah, blah. And we got through the 9 and we discussed them. Just to recap, I'm an 8-3, which means strong and self-reliant and to succeed and achieve. And in the test is an interesting one. You two have done it now. And the test, I think, is very clever by print, where you can't really answer how you want to be perceived. There's around 756 questions on print. And you will keep going on the test until it picks up the algorithms pick up your unconscious motivators. So you might have answered some of those questions and gone, well, both, but if pushed, this one. And you might have answered some of them where you went, well, neither, but if pushed, this one. And it does that on purpose. There's also, I believe, a time limit on the question. So if you overanalyze it, it tries to throw just a different question at you in a different way, which is sometimes why you might have felt, I've already answered this question. And what it's trying to do is the algorithms are trying to pick up your unconscious motivators, what is naturally driving your behaviors. So to cut straight to the chase, Phil, what was your 2 unconscious motivators in your report?
Yeah, so on the last episode, when you went through the initial 9, I thought I was going to be similar to you. I was 8-3. Definitely 8 was the one that resonated. And it turns out that 7 major and 8 minor, which is 7 is enjoy life and be happy, and then the minor one, the secondary one, being to be strong and self-reliant.
Yeah, and you indicated in the first episode that when I was talking about being detailed and structured and, analysing in the weeds, you were like, that is completely not me. And talking about patience and stuff. 7-8 is the 2 motivators out of the 9 human motivators that have the least patience are 7 and an 8, and you've got them both. So it's like double whammy.
Yeah, come on, Martin, get on with it.
Yeah. James, let's go straight to you, because we maybe thought in episode 1 that there was going to be a difference here, and you was hoping to be special. What did yours reveal?
I think before we move on to man, when you came into that, you used the term as will kick off, and I think what's important we've identified from this process that Phil is different than me. Is very aggressive, isn't that right, Phil? that's come through. So to kick off was pretty close there, but no, we're very similar. No, I do joke, but yeah, exactly. 7 major and 8 minor. So to enjoy life and be happy, and to be strong and self-reliant. So
in that, then we both guessed Phil would be sort of an 8-ish, 8 or a 3-ish in terms of the first episode. We definitely said you was a 4 or a 7, so we got the 7 right. But your profiles are print twins. You are both 7/8s. Now, if you read under the line, it says your minor in relation to your major will be low, medium, or high. Now, I believe yours is low, James, and I believe Phil's is medium.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, all that means, guys, is when you took the test, you both are definitely a 7 and an 8, but Phil's 8, to be strong and self-reliant, is a little bit more up the pecking order with him. It's a bit more present in Phil. It's stronger in a relation to the major than yours is. So what yours is saying, James, is you still want to be strong and self-reliant, but your overarching motivator is to enjoy life and be happy and be creative and spin lots of plates. So if in your dynamic, and this is just a guess, guys, in your working dynamic, if you are likely to discuss contentious issues or you do lock horns, you're more likely to concede eventually, James, than maybe Phil. Because Phil's 8 is slightly more present in, he wants to be strong and self-reliant and in control to some sense.
Well, that's just giving me a bit of ammunition, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but that's only because Phil's
hold out.
But that only happens because Phil's got an aggression problem.
That's because he's more dominant.
Hey, I bruise like a peach. So. It's funny because Phil and I were talking the other day, and we were having a general conversation about business ideas and setups and stuff like that, and people that we meet, and we actually had a conversation before we worked on this, and it was about how we're alphas, but what works really well is that we both have the ability to step back depending on the situation. And I've got to admit, when Phil and I are ever approaching something, we either pretty much completely, I think we agree most times than not, and then we have different ideas within that agreement, which just works really well. But if I'm ever kind of unsure, but and Phil's adamant, then I just have that, like, that's not a problem. I don't need to really test it anymore. If one of us is swaying more over the grand scheme of things, it's just going like, yeah, I'm happy to do that. Absolutely happy to do that.
There's 3 motivators out of the 9 that are the most independent, that just sort of signal independence. And that is obviously a 3, to succeed and achieve. Because when people want to succeed and achieve, it's like, get out my way. I can't have anybody stopping me. 7s, because they're just carefree and want to enjoy life and be happy. And actually, I'm not going to be railroaded into something I aren't going to be engaged in. And 8s, because they've got they're flexing the guns, going, I'm in charge here, and I want to, I'll make the decisions and I'll. So 3, 7s, and 8s, for slightly different reasons, are very independent motivators. And people who have them are some of the most driven, successful, self-motivated, independent people, on the courageous. They take risks, bold, all of this stuff. And as long as they're in the best version of themselves, and as you've both read in your reports, there's a best side to being a 7/8 and there's a shadow side to being a 7/8. And it's like that with all personality styles and motivations. But you two have got motivations that are very driven, self-dependent, very goal-driven, very strong, dominant motivators. And same for me as an 8/3. So our opportunity, we sit on the side of the fence where nobody has to motivate us to go and do something, right? Nobody, we will take that mantle ourselves. But what we've got to be cautious of is when we're in shadow, we can be pissed off, bulldozing, controlling, fixed-minded to change, unrelenting from our position. We can be opinionated. We'll jump into conflict. And you can see that all it is a fine line. And as long as our motivators are being met, we're going to be great. But when we're challenged, we're not going to be great.
Yeah.
And there's another set of motivators that we don't have, like peace and harmony, safe and secure, to be needed and appreciated, that are the opposite to us. They're very unsure. They're very risk averse. They'll put others before themselves. They don't make so many bold and courageous decisions out of the fear of getting something wrong. They care deeply about what other people think of them. Does that make sense? Yeah. So their opportunity, because they're wonderful human beings, is to sometimes put their head above the parapet and take some risks and have some self-confidence. So as you can imagine, with Print Profile, and I'll wrap this up and you can grill me for the rest of this this show, is there are 9 human motivators. Everybody has 2. A major and a minor. So there's 72 variations of report, low, medium, and high relevance. So usually the analysis in the report is incredibly accurate to the individual, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does, because I got the report and I read through it, and then I read it to my family, and they were just laughing. It was as if they'd written it. They're just so spot on. And the traits that you're saying there, with that sort of like that single-minded, functional, operational, when probably the most, I suppose when you're under pressure and under stress, these things are gonna come out, because it's going to be your defense mechanism, isn't it? It's going to be how you get through. And one of the most stressful things in family life is going on holiday. And for my family, we've identified that their holiday starts the morning that we're going away. And my holiday starts when I've managed to get them onto the aeroplane, and I know that I've done my job and the pilot is now going to get us the rest of the way.
You know what? I'm laughing. That is exactly how I am. When when we're up in the air and I have my first drink, that is the only time I relax.
Yeah.
Because it's my duty. It's your duty to get them there to that point. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a big friction point from getting into the airport car park to getting on the aeroplane, because it's like, whoa, we're at an airport, look at this duty free, look at this, look at that. and they call me the robot. And so my family call me the robot, because I stop all forms of communication and I become very single-minded. And I sometimes even forget to turn around and look to check they're following me.
Do you also, my wife goes mad at me, because I'm also walking with 2 cases at like 100 miles an hour down the middle of the airport, and everybody's behind me. I'm going, hurry up, and she's like, what's the rush? We can't get on the plane any quicker. And I'm like, I know, but once we're at the gate and we're in the vicinity of the gate, then we're done. You can go when you want. And it is that very target driven. And the other thing, like, we've done a lot of the testing on these motivators, and what the motivator that rises to the top all the time in terms of handling pressure, if in fact coming alive under pressure, is an 8. So if the pressure's on, 8s go, right, it's me who has to take the lead here. I'm going to shoulder the burden of getting us out of this. Whereas there's other motivators, when pressure hits, where they go, oh, I hope somebody else is going to take the lead. So we don't have a problem doing that, if that makes sense. But then we'll be absolutely relentless until we get to the end. But it is a really useful tool in understanding yourself. And this is the thing, right? If I asked you 2 questions, you're both a 7-8, and we're starting to correlate patterns and being able to connect the dots between your formative years and where these motivators have manifested in you from. And do you remember in the first episode, I talked about parental, social, educational. So the way your parents parented you is a huge impact on your motivators manifesting, your school experiences, and your early social experiences. So parental is probably the biggest percentage of that we find. So 7s, right? You're both a 7 major. And the most common story we get one-to-one with people who have a 7 motivator, to enjoy life and be happy, to be free, to be independent, to do what you want to do and enjoy what you do. For that to sort of happen, it sort of comes through sort of two real main ways, really, where when you grew up, let's say you had a robust, rigid rules in the household or structure or governance or whatever, and it was overly rigid. And it doesn't always have to be in the household. It means, but you sort of didn't like that oppression. So as you developed your brain, you've gone, right, I want to be free and I want to do what I want to do. I don't want to be dictated to. So sometimes that can manifest, and 8s and 7s also have a really direct link to growing up with not much. And I don't mean poverty. I mean growing up with not having all of the luxury your friends had, or didn't live in the lavish house, or didn't go on the holidays that everybody else went on, or not having the best trainers, or the designer gear. And therefore, sometimes we see those 7s and those 8s manifest in people who have shared stories about potentially not having everything they wanted as a child or would have desired, and therefore it's that I'm going to have that when I'm older, and I'm going to make sure that happens. So I don't know if that correlates with you, but James, you was just pointing there.
Yeah, I'm interested in that, because when you gave that example, you talked about kind of items, and you didn't speak about like opportunities or experiences or situations. And I think I was essentially, I had an older half brother, half sister, but I did seem like essentially an only child in many ways, in the house, certainly in the household. So, I did get a nice pair of trainers, not overly stuff, but I got things like that. But I think there was certain experiences or moments that I think I wanted and really drove to. So, and the thing is, we always had a family holiday. Mum and dad would save up really hard so we could have a 1 or 2 week holiday in the sunshine. And for me, when I went overseas, I'm dark anyway, so I would tan really easily. I'd be immersed in this, like, people speaking a different language in the sunshine that's just guaranteed every day, play loads of activities and meet loads of people. And it was just like the best 2 weeks of the year ever. And because of that, as soon as I could then, being old enough in terms of then going out on my own and choosing to put myself in different experiences and throw myself into things that I had the control over and was able to do, I just did more and more of that. I'd try all sorts of clubs and sports clubs, and then as soon as I started getting a job and could, I would travel to different countries each year, then travel the world I left the UK for 18 months and spent thousands of pounds.
And that's an example of why we use the terminology connecting the dots, because when you're going we've already gone from your personality style to your motivators. You guys now know what your motivations are. So now we're talking about connecting the dots between your motivations and your sense of purpose, your formative years. You've told a story there, James, that actually you resonate with that, the fact that you want to enjoy life and be happy and have things to look forward to and have variation and positive experiences and all the rest of it. But you're connecting the dots between, there's an anchor in your childhood of very, very positive memories that was your favorite time of growing up. So you want to replicate that. And generally in psychology, you've hit on an important here. In psychology, when we do the one-to-one work, you can define 2 crossroads in people's answers. They either want to replicate the way their parents were with them or the experiences they had, or they want to rebel against their parents or the experiences that they had and want to be anything but them. So that's what it's like, towards pleasure or away from pain in NLP. So what we find in sense of purpose is, for example, and I'll come to Phil in a second, but you could be a 7-8, James, based on the fact that you want to replicate some of the experiences you had as a child. Phil might go, I didn't have a bad childhood, but I had some anchors where I want to rebel against them. I certainly have certain things I want to avoid rather than want to replicate. So Phil, it's interesting. I don't know if you're listening to any of that and connecting any of your own dots at the minute.
Yeah, I think I struggled at first when you were saying about sort of those moments in childhood and how you were parented and things. Neither of the examples resonated, but as I sort of like worked with that, I'm thinking that firstly, one of my main drivers right now is and has been ever since I've had kids, is to not work whilst they're not at school. So 12 weeks of the year. And that, as a business owner, and you probably know yourself, you can't be at home and be on holiday. You have to be on holiday. And so that generally means sort of like certainly getting out of East Yorkshire. And when I was growing up, my parents, they would always take us to Bridlington on holiday, like, you know, sort of 15 miles down the road. And we would go, as soon as school finished for summer holidays, we would go that night, and then we would come back sort of like the night before school started again. And that's obviously, it's one of the most amazing memories, or a series of memories from my childhood. And I very much try to replicate that in as many different forms as possible. But we never ever went abroad, and all of my friends would always be coming back. Like James would have been one of them. Like, you know, he was in Spain, or he was in Italy, or he was in France, or whatever it might be, and we were always in Bridlington. And so I guess there's two sides to it there. There's a very nostalgic one, and there's also a rebelling against the other part to it.
I think it's like mine. Your life must be mirrored. My grandmother and grandfather lived in Bridlington, right. So I spent a lot of my childhood there. 6 weeks holidays, I'd stay for a week or two on end.
Yeah.
And like you say, very fond memories of, because Bridlington and the coast in the summer and the beaches, the fab. But for me, like, again, growing up, I only had one foreign holiday before the age of, I think, 15, 16, which was we drove to the south of France in the car in a Ford Orion. We drove 2 days with no air conditioning to the south of France, and we camped on a campsite. And that was my one foreign holiday as a child. So, yeah, I resonate with that. And therefore, people always ask me now, you know, about what's the thing I like to spend my money on. And the only answer is holidays.
Yeah.
I love spending money on holidays because it's an experience that, you know, like you say, I never overly had, but that we have as a family, and that I love. And this is the key to it, guys, just to sort of, again, before you've got anything else on your agenda, this is the key to it. We do this testing because we can test for personality styles with neuroscience and with psychometric testing. We can test for unconscious biases and motivators, so the things that have manifested in us that drive it. But the sense of purpose piece and the backstory, the origins of where that comes from, means different things to different people. And you can't box them, you can't categorize them. We've done thousands of these one-to-one sense of purpose sessions, and there's all sorts of stuff that crops up. There's a few trends, like we said, but it has to be you who connects the dots from your motivators down, and not anybody else, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a question with regards to what we're going through now. COVID, lockdown, crisis, the world changing overnight on March the whatever it was, 2020. I believe that from what I've read in this report and our discussions, that your 3s, 7s, and 8s are probably quite well equipped to deal with that, to do the pivot, to do the creative thinking, to not sort of like knock them completely off into a hillside, just to refocus, realign, and move forwards. Certainly in my report, I'm reading those sorts of phrases and things, and it's resonating with me. However, there must be traits that it's the exact opposite. This is the worst possible thing that can happen to that trait. What would those traits be? And this is also another like very live example that we're going through right now, is that if someone in a team has got those traits, and how you could support that, how you could help that.
Lydia, our occupational psychologist, wrote a paper on this recently. We've got enough data points now to know in the normal, in our, when we're operating as normal, we have already the data, the motivators that generally, and it's not an exact science, but we have the trends of the motivators that are more susceptible to stress, anxiety, worry, all of those things. And that's no different during COVID, because if you think in COVID-19, it's just escalated the situation for those types of motivators, and it's still the same. So if you think about, you're absolutely right, some of the motivators that are geared towards achievement and reward and pleasure, like 3s, succeed and achieve, and 7s, variation, enjoy life and be happy, positives, what can be done, and your 8s, look, it's a crisis, let's rise to the challenge and take control and pivot. So your 3s, 7s, and 8s are definitely more likely to be dealing with this situation better. And motivators that are more designed and more susceptible to move away from pain and risk, or who need engagement with other human beings, are more likely to struggle. So that would be your 6, to be safe and secure, your 2s, to be needed and appreciated by other human beings, your 4s, to be special and find meaning in your life. Because right now, if you sat at home in isolation every day, unless you're pivoting, you're not finding any meaning, right? Yeah. Unless you're gearing your brain to interpret the situation in the right way. So you're absolutely right. There are certain motivators that are going to be more susceptible. And I would say what we see in the data and in the conversations we have, 2s, 4s and 6s, those you're either the motivators that are either incredibly humanistic and need human connection, or the ones who are designed to be risk averse and move away from pain, are certainly the ones who are probably going to find it a bit more tough than the others. But here's the thing, and this is why print is wonderful. You have a major and a minor. So if you've got 2 motivators, all 3 of us have 2 motivators that align with each other. Does that make sense? So we've got motivators that are a 7 and an 8 or a 3 and an 8 are, let's take on the world, can do, let's take responsibility and be accountable for what we do. But there are a lot of people who have a mixed combination. So there's someone out there who could have an 8-2. So Dave Pendleton, one of my consultants, is an 8-2. He has strong and self-reliant, but I also want to be needed and appreciated. And if you think about that, it's slightly schizophrenic. He won't mind me saying, right? Because you go in, I'm strong and self-reliant and I can do this, but am I doing a good job? And I need
Is that okay with you? Yeah.
I'm doing a good job, but I need other people for validation. And it's that real contrast. We also see people who have got, for example, and it's rare, but we've seen people who have got like a 3 and a 6 or an 8 and a 6. So they want to succeed and achieve and be strong, but then they want to be safe and secure. And they're getting pulled by their motivations to one direction, and that's where procrastination and worry and anxiety comes from. So 72 combinations. If you've got 2 motivators that are aligned with one or the other, it's relatively straightforward in terms of the way you think. If you've got a really humanistic motivator with a really task goal driven motivator, sometimes it can challenge each other. But yeah, there's definitely some people who, with certain motivators, who would find this more challenging than others.
Yeah. So with that knowledge for your team, I guess, and something like this happens, or something in a smaller version you can see happening on the horizon, I guess you could prepare team members slightly differently and in slightly different ways, and maybe even change roles and responsibilities based on, what you can see coming and how you can see that trait, those motivators would deal with it.
Absolutely. And that's the key. And it's, the reason we use the tool so well is because there's loads of different values to it in terms of the way you work with your colleagues and the way you operate with your staff. But for example, I'm coaching a lot of senior leaders at the minute remotely. And we're saying to them, if you've got people with a combination like a 6-2, because and she won't mind me saying, I've got a 6-2 in my team. And she's the one who's struggling with the lockdown the most.
Yeah.
And she's the one, therefore, who if I have a check-in with her, there's a certain conversation we have, which is completely different to a conversation that I might have with, someone who's an 8-2, 8-3 or 8-1 or whatever it might be. So I would be saying to people, just look for certain people who have got these motivators. They might be fine, and it's on an individual basis, but check in with these people because they've got motivators that their triggers are being pressed right now.
Yeah.
And we haven't talked about triggers, but you've got your triggers.
That was exactly what I was going to say, because I've got the screen up here about some possible triggers, and I've got you asked for a top 3, so that was leading us on perfectly.
Triggers are important. So just before you start, James, triggers for the people watching are in your analysis. You get your motivations and what it means, but you also get a list of your triggers, and the triggers are really interesting because they say these are the isolated incidents or events that will compromise or challenge your motivators. So you almost get like a battle guide of the things that will piss you off on a daily basis in black and white. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I mean, because you asked for our top 3, and when I looked at these, there's certainly there's a clear one, and then 2 is actually a couple of them put together.
What will be interesting is to see if you and Phil have picked the same 3 or different, because you've both got the same report, you'll have similar triggers. So it'll be interesting to see you've picked the same ones.
I'm not sure if we will, but then
just so far with that, I hadn't picked my 3, so I didn't get the part of the homework. Just talk amongst yourselves. I'll be 30 seconds.
That'll have come through in his print report that he is one of his highlighted weaknesses: aggression and.
Can I just make an observation for you two as well? And this is a universal observation. The people who are least responsive on email are 7s, right? Phil has never responded to an email I've been in on ever, and James does, but it's not, as an impatient 8-3, it's not as quick as I'd like sometimes. But
it's a fake 7. It's a fake 7.
7s
I'm pleased you brought this up, because this is an area that triggers me with Phil.
Yeah, 7s can be so scatty in response times because they're juggling lots of plates, or they think I'll do it later, or they get attracted to this little shiny project over here, and it's like, come on, you know.
Very true.
What about being late?
Well, yeah, I don't know how punctual you two are, but I'm ex-military, so I'm on time all the time. But 7s are generally scatty with timekeeping, with responsiveness, with being orderly at times. You know, they can be really scatty. But then 8s, here's the thing with you two, 8s can be very, very like a 3 organised. So you have a motivator that says, well, here's the thing with you two, right? If you're interested in it, you'll be orderly. If it doesn't capture your interest, you know, forget about it. So that's how your combination will manifest. So, James, what are your top 3 triggers?
Has Phil got his yet? Because I don't want to.
Well, I've got my top 4 at the moment.
Right. So my top one, because there's running through. I mean, feeling micromanaged, undermined, and not in control. I mean, yeah, of course there's that, but I don't mind being led by a good leader. In fact, I love it, because you're just like a sponge. You know, I've sat in boardroom meetings with Thomas Martin from Arco, and you're just like, this is how a board meeting should be run. You're just like, oh, you can't help. So, yeah, I've got an interesting slant on that. People who take long time to make decisions, but then I've got more respect for that's how they work. People who overanalyze and overprocess. Hey, depending on the setup, if people want to overanalyze, that's fine, because I'm going to do the opposite. So we're meeting in the middle might be quite a good thing, and I'm aware.
So
of
what
that.
are the 3, James? What are your top 3?
I've got my 3.
Feeling pinned down or hemmed in is the clear one. Feeling pinned down or hemmed in. I need a lot of freedom, and often it's not.
This man who's sat in Turkey.
Yeah. Again, struggles to keep a relationship going up here. Yeah, that's this guy. But successes in relationships as well has been where you're allowed that freedom or that sense of freedom. So not that you'll take it all the time, but knowing that you've got that, if that you ever need to tap into that, is key. And I have experienced that before, which is incredible.
And that's your 8. So that's one of mine as well. If you're an 8, the number 1 trigger is feeling pinned down or hemmed in your relationships, at work, but in any form of life. You know, if you feel like your independence is curtailed, that it ain't happening.
Indeed, and that's when with the COVID-19 situation that we find ourselves in, the main struggle I'm finding is not having that city break in a couple of months to really help focus the now and work the stupid hours that we need to work on all of that, because I know that that's coming. So I've got that, and that's not my normal process without having that. You
make a really good point. All 7s always talk about that they're in a really good mindset if they've got something to look forward to. So having the next holiday in the diary, having the next challenge, you know, the next 10K run booked in, whatever it might be that floats their boat, they have to have that to look forward to. If they've got nothing, they really struggle. They do struggle at times. What's your number 2, James?
So number 2 are it's 2 and 3 equal measure, and they kind of come in as one. People who won't try new things, but that's it's less of a frustration now, like younger, you go like, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Now it's less of a frustration. It's just more of a, that's who that person is, and that doesn't suit me. That they're very different than me. So, if I'm on a date and there's a girl that won't try a dish because she doesn't like it, but she's never tried it, I'll be just like, all right, it's a bit of a red flag there that says a lot about somebody.
You're coming across as really high maintenance, James. Are you single by any chance?
I am single, man. Yeah, I am single.
Where's Phil gone?
Well, this took a different direction, didn't it?
Oh,
and inflexible and rigid behaviour is that just because that's how they are, that's how they see, and that they're not open to trying new things. Or, I can sit with anybody around the world, any age, any religion, any race, any belief, as long as they're open to be sharing, because that's how I believe that's how.
So your three triggers, James. Number one is that the first one, telling your independence and feeling hemmed in, is challenging your 8 motivator. So that's compromising your number 8 to be strong and self-reliant. The other 2 are compromising your 7 to enjoy life, be happy, and have variation and try new things. And therefore, if you think about it, other people who you meet who have different motivators to have more routine, more structure, more repetition, more being risk averse, they're not bad people. They're just motivated by different things to you. And that's where the clash can happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes sense. So Phil, what have you got? Similar ones, or have you highlighted different ones?
Well, I mean, so I read them all, and it was just every single one resonated with me. I could think of an example of every single one, where I started to boil a bit. I was like, oh yeah, because when that happens, yeah, that's me. That's me. Like,
it's a trigger when you get pissed off reading it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I was gone. I had to go find a quiet corner. But yeah. So my 3, not being able to do things my way. I another airport story. Last time, I can't remember where I was going, but I was in Leeds Bradford Airport, and I got right the way through to the aeroplane, and the carry-on bag that I had taken on every single flight for the past 6 years, Ryanair stopped me and they tried to fit it in the thing. And then and what it was, there was a plastic clip so the thing would stand up there. There was a plastic clip and it wouldn't fit in because of this plastic clip. And so in front of like the holding pen, which was an entire airplane full of people, these 2 Ryanair women were saying, right, okay, that's 25 euros, fine. And I'm like, I'm not paying. And I was trying to snap this thing up. I was trying to write it. I was getting people over to help me, and they had to stop me because I was going to break the cage thing. But
it will go in. Let me jump on it.
When I paid the 25 quid and I got on the airplane and I put it under the seat in front of me, I took a picture and sent it to them. I was that boiled over it. And it wasn't about the money or anything like that. It was the fact that I've always done that. I've always taken that case, and all of a sudden someone's stopping me from doing.
So again, not being able to do things your way is definitely challenging your 8 motivator to be strong and self-reliant, and I don't want to depend on anybody. Yeah.
Yeah. Having your creativity and ideas stifled.
Well, actually 7.
Yeah.
So 7s thrive on idea generation, on creative freedom, etc. Yeah.
Because I only come up with awesome ideas.
I've only done that. I've only done that once with Phil. There's only been one time ever. And what time was that, Phil? What was that over? Can you remember?
Can I move on to the next one? I don't want to. So
I'll allow that one to move on.
And then can't do attitudes. Oh man.
Negative, pessimistic, can't do attitudes. And that's because you 2 are very much wired in a way of a can do. So it's like, if there's a problem, let's look at what we can do to fix it. We don't need to have a long drawn out conversation of why it went wrong and what went wrong and who's at fault. Let's just focus on how we move forward. So if you encounter people who are overly focused on blame and negativity and, well, we can't do that because we tried it 3 years ago and it didn't work then, that's just going to drive you crazy. And that's because your view of the world is very much optimistic and can do. And that very much comes with your motivator to enjoy life and be happy. And here's the thing, right? You know, you to ask me the question, what's best? Is it best to be similar with your motivators, to have complete opposites? There's no exact science to it. Me and my wife are complete opposites. She's a 6'2" to be safe and secure and to be needed and appreciated. And I'm an 8'3" to be strong and self-reliant. But I always use this analogy that we're like the rock and the kite. You know, I'm the kite and she's the rock. So I'm not flying off like in all different directions and she's not completely staying on the ground. You need the two of us to sort of have that balancing out. But the mutual understanding is key because we have the ability to trigger each other. Yeah. When two people are exactly the same, and this is my opinion from the data, if I was going to lean towards something, generally two people with the entire same motivators and driven by the same things and the same triggers clash more because you could press each other's triggers. For example, you two work very well together because you know each other, but you're both strong and self-reliant. So if Phil wanted to go in a direction and you wanted to go in a different direction, the potential for two 8s to stand their ground and enter conflict is huge, right? But as you learn, as you go forward, like you said, James, I know the group and power dynamics, and I'm quite happy. If Phil's really passionate about something, I'm quite happy to take a step back. And therefore, in future things, when you get really animated about something, Phil will maybe take a step back. Maybe not, but you know
but that is how it works.
I mean, we've had discussions about this show and the format of this show, haven't we? And we had differing opinions, but we've reached the point where it works, and it was actually your version of the event. So I have that ability.
Well, that's it. But the mutual understanding is key. So there's no exact science to it, but I guess you two are very similar in many ways, which makes, I guess, a good dynamic between you in terms of thinking. And you've just got to watch out for when the triggers are being pressed on either your 7s or your 8s. But you sound like you've got that covered off. But here's the thing. You two have clearly worked with each other for a period of time. You know each other pretty well. Can you imagine a manager in an organization who is managing 50 people or has 50 people in their department? They don't have the level of relationship you two have. They don't know the people's unconscious motivators and wonder why they get it right with some and badly wrong with others, because they're operating completely based on their motivations and how they see the world. Yeah. And what we do in this work is very much try to get people to understand exactly what we was talking about on episode 1. Don't treat people how you would like to be treated, because you'll get it right with some and not others. Treat people how they would like to be treated. And the way you do that is to understand them at a deeper level and find out a little bit more about them.
Yeah, so based on that, is that, just touch on that, is that although we've talked about all these similarities, is that our setups are very different. You know, Phil's married with 3 kids, very different setup than I have. But our needs need to be met in that we both love to travel or be on holiday. You know, my big thing is being in the sunshine, working remotely, and having that. And Phil's passion, you know, is his family, clearly. And so we understand that that's so important for both of us. Very different, but equally as important. So we just have, I know we have so much respect that, you know, Phil goes on holiday, it's just like, right, I'm going to work harder. I'm going to have more focus. I'm going to take up the slack because that's really important for him. And likewise, I get that in return as well. So we do have very, very big differences in our circumstances, but so much respect as well.
And that's the power of understanding. And that comes with time, with relationships, etc. But listen, just because you've known each other a long time, it means nothing. I've done sessions with directors who have been on a board in an organization with each other for 15 years. And they hate each other's guts because so much has happened over that. Even though they know each other well, things have happened where they've challenged each other's motivations and triggered each other so many times in the past that they can't get past it now. And like the human brain is a wonderful thing. We have a computer in our brain where we store memories and experiences. And the more we store negative experiences about people, the deep-rooted they become and the harder it is to get past it. So the person who pissed you off 15 years ago because they did X, and you're still holding a grudge about it today, it's where stubbornness comes from. So what we do in this is we lift the lid. I mean, the amount of times we've lifted the lid on the problem between two people around something that happened 10 years ago and they haven't got past it. and therefore, you know, we try and break that down and recreate like a new anchor to sort of wipe the slate clean and say, right, listen, it happened because you operated in the way that's natural to you and your motivations. That compromised and challenged this person's motivations, and you never discussed it or dealt with it very well, and it's festered. You know, actually, you're both really similar and really good at what you do, and we can bring this together. So wonderful things happen when you know what's driving people's behavior rather than just seeing the behavior and reacting to it.
So I believe that people change and evolve like every sort of 5 to 10 years, you know, through experiences, knowledge, good and bad experiences, whatever. I'm not the same person I was 5 to 7 years ago, and then 5 to 7 years before that. By looking at this, is kind of what I'm saying there is that the person that sits on top of these motivators can change and evolve, but the motivators are constant because they're inbred at a very earlier age.
Great question, and we're monitoring this data all the time. So for example, we're testing people every 3 years at the minute to see if the change in terms of their unconscious motivators.
Right.
The indication is that in the main, unconscious motivators are formed as we reach adulthood from the experiences in our formative years. That's clear. The question is to your point, do they then, through adulthood, depending on careers and jobs and relationships and circumstance, does it change? The indication is unconscious motivators are pretty deep rooted and deep seated. They may change, like your 7 and your 8 might change order. Your 7 might swap out for a 3. But for example, Phil, we don't really see people go from being an 8-3 to a 6-2. It's just too dramatic. It's too much of a personality transplant, and that doesn't happen in people. By the time we are in adulthood, we're pretty much who we are. What changes rapidly, however, is how we respond to them. Right. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
So through our experiences and through our tenure and through different environments and relationships and experiences, we tend to respond to the motivators differently because we learn what serves us well and what doesn't serve us well. So as an 8-3, strong and self-reliant, succeed and achieve, I've always been this, but I was quite an aggressive, impatient, fixed mindset, alpha wolf 8-3 in my early 20s. In fact, as I left the military and came into the corporate world, I was probably a nightmare to manage. You know, I was very opinionated. I didn't really take advice and criticism very well. You know, I was good at my job as well, which was worse because it reinforced I knew what I was doing. So I was probably a pain in the ass, but I can look back at that now and say I was motivated by the same things, but I didn't understand them, and it didn't serve me very well. Whereas I'm still an 8-3 now, but I'm far more aware of my behavior, of how to approach situations, of how to manage my emotions when I'm feeling, you know, challenged. So I think to answer your question, Phil, our research and what we're seeing in trends is by the time you reach adulthood, your motivations are pretty much your motivations. They might change a little bit, but not very much. What absolutely changes is how you react to them and how you respond to situations, because you learn, you evolve.
Yeah. Are you on Tinder right now?
I thought he was asleep then for a minute.
You know what? After that public notification about me being single, I'm just getting my username to tell at the end of the episode. So,
and episode three, we're gonna find James a date.
We'll see how high maintenance I really am, Martin, at that stage. But
as long as they're open to try new food on the menu in the restaurant and go into new places, yeah.
Just up for trying new shit. That's it.
Unfortunately, they've gone off and tried new boyfriends.
Yeah, that's what's happened. But no, in all seriousness, yeah, it's interesting and funny that you've said there is it's not so much about everybody meeting you or partners or friends meeting you on the same level, but having that understanding at the same time, and that's continued throughout this episode. So very interesting, very true, and healthy compromise in business, in friendships, in relationships, you know, with partners there as well. So I think that's also key. Well, we are going to have you on again sooner rather than later. That's for sure. We'll definitely do that. We'll have a good think about, you know, like, I think what we might actually do is ask the audience as well what we want to focus on. There's a lot of people struggling out there that we're picking up on. Phil?
Yeah, no, I was going to say on that, can we put a link in for people to go and do print reports, and then presumably if they've got any questions, we can do like some sort of Q&A? The
challenge for that, Phil, is it costs money. I mean, obviously I've done you two as a freebie, but obviously print it costs us to run the reports and the analysis with our license. So obviously there's a charged model. We charge £75 a report for print, and it's got to be delivered and facilitated like I facilitated it to you prior to this. So it's not one of them freebie online tests, unfortunately. No. But if they want to...
No, I don't think we were thinking of that. I think we actually... Look, we're a non-sales platform, but the value that you're giving us, and it's actually... It feels like salesy because this is a really valuable tool for people to be taking right now, exploring, and getting more understanding. So if we can...
Just put our details on there. Just put our Trans2 details on there. If anybody wants to get in touch to inquire about it or to discuss it for their businesses or their employees or their teams, you know, we'll absolutely have a chat with them and speak with them. And we've been doing a lot of online facilitation of print recently because we can't get face to face. The face to face stuff we do is great, but what we're finding in this COVID-19 is this is fine. It's absolutely fine, and you either sit around and do nothing or you do something like this. You know.
Yeah.
So before we fill out, where's the first holiday that you both are gonna? So what have you put a marker in the ground? Yeah, we spoke about having something positive to aim for. We love we come together that we love our holidays and love our travel. So where have you put your marker in the ground yet on your next trip? And if not, where would you?
Well, we've had to cancel 2 holidays because of COVID-19. So we were due to go to Ibiza in 2 weeks. That's cancelled. Just a beach holiday for a week with the kids, and we're booked to go to Florida in end of August, early September. But it's looking like that's going to push as well. So I think we're going to try and, as long as this is all out the way, we're going to rebook Florida for next year with the kids, and then we're going to try and get a winter break in the sun. So maybe around Christmas time, try and, you know, Cape Verde or the Canaries or something like that. Just a bit of sun for the winter. But I guess it depends on how it all goes.
Yeah, indeed. Phil?
Well, I'm the same. At Easter, it was big birthday in the house, and so we were celebrating that birthday in Mauritius. So that went, and then the half-term holiday that's coming up, that was going to be with you, James. We were in Turkey. So that one's gone as well. So
was you going, Phil, with your wife and kids and taking James with you?
Yeah.
What, to Turkey?
Yeah. So
we were coming to Turkey, and we were going to meet up in Bodrum, weren't we? And we were looking at getting a boat in Bodrum.
I thought you meant you was taking your wife and kids and James as well as part of the family.
Kids.
We did talk about like that. Yeah.
I'm like the Pied Piper when I go on holiday.
It's funny you should say that, because before the real lockdown on flights came into the UK, I remember I was sat having a beer, just wrapping up for the day. As the sun was coming down, I spoke with Phil, and we were talking about what's going on and stuff. And he's like, "Do you know what? I'm just thinking of like heading off to Mauritius and locking down over there. Would you be up for it?" And I was like, "Well, the answer straight away is yes, Phil. I would. Like, I could do PE lessons, I could do DJ lessons. Like, I'm here for you, mate. If you need me to help you, I'm here for you. No problem." So,
yeah, you're all heart, mate. You're all heart.
All heart. But we have committed to do New Year's in the land of smiles in Thailand. So that's
it all needs to be done by New Year, doesn't it? And then we know that one's booked in.
Awesome. Yes. Yeah. Can't wait, guys. Enjoyed it as always.
Yeah, likewise, nice Martin. One. Thanks very much for your time again.
See you again.
Appreciate it, mate.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Business Lockdown.
Please comment, like, share and subscribe to help build our global community.
We look forward to seeing you all soon.